Let's bring in our panel right now. Martha Raddatz joining us again, along with Bill Kristol, editor of the Weekly Standard. Been a long time since you've been on the roundtable. Welcome back.
Good to be with you, George.
Congressman Keith Ellison, the chair of the Progressive Caucus in the House. And Congressman, let me begin with you to pick up on that conversation we just had, because I take it you saw that both the senator and the congressman laid out the dilemma facing U.S. policy, not quite willing to cut off U.S. aid, yet you are.
Yes, I am. I would cut off aid. I would, however, engage in intense diplomacy in Egypt and in the region to try to say, look, we will restore aid when you stop the bloodshed in the street and set up a path towards democracy that you were on before. In my mind, there's no way to say that this was not a coup. It is. We should say so. And then we should follow our own law, which says we cannot fund the coup leaders. The African Union has said this. Europeans have said this. We can say this too. Then we shouldn't look at this just in the short term. We should look at it, our long-term integrity of the region.
Bill Kristol, one country that has not said that is Israel. Israel, ironically, actually wants to keep the aid flowing.
Well, I think they prefer the military to rule to the Muslim Brotherhood ruling. And I think an awful lot of people in the region prefer that. You know, an awful lot of the Arab governments prefer it. And it's not clear to me that we shouldn't prefer it. So most of my friends in the foreign policy world are for cutting off aid. I'm much more uncertain at this point. I mean, this is a trigger we can only pull once, right? You can only cut off the aid once. And what's the point of it? What would happen concretely? What better thing is going to happen in Egypt or in the region if tomorrow morning the president got on TV and said we're cutting off the aid? I'm very doubtful about that. And I think there's a lot we can do with our relationship with the Egyptian military that will be harder to do once we cut off the aid.
Martha, White House officials I talked to say that they haven't ruled out this step, but they make Bill's point as well. It would create a fundamentally new relationship with a longtime ally.
It definitely. When you got to remember that this aid came about after the Camp David Accords. I think one thing that could happen is that they monitor that aid more closely, making sure it goes into that funnel, making sure it goes to help with the Camp David Accords. Israel definitely doesn't want this aid to stop. They definitely don't want to see that go away because, as Bill says, they don't want the Muslim Brotherhood around either.
Where's this going in the Congress?
Well, I hope that it's going towards we're going to suspend aid until they establish some democratic protocols and stop the violence. But, you know, there's a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans, who are feeling the same way that I am and others. And so I think that there was actually an amendment earlier this year to suspend aid to Egypt. And I don't think it's a matter of cut aid. I think it's really more a matter of saying we will not fund this coup and this bloodshed. If you get your act together, we can reestablish the relationship. So it's not like, you know, it's a done deal. It is a iterative process, which I hope results in the cessation of this violence.
And Bill, it's created a series of difficult headlines for the administration. I want to put some of them up there right now. Egypt's blood, America's complicity, Obama's greatest failure, the passive president, spineless on Egypt. You know, I think this is kind of an existential problem. I think this would likely be happening to almost any president, given our relative decline in power. But is there something the administration could have done earlier to change the course of these events?
Well, I think so. I mean, we have been withdrawing from the Middle East. It's very clear. We didn't leave troops in Iraq. We said Assad must go in Syria, and then Assad stayed. And then this is big. Almost exactly a year ago, I think it was August 20th, 2012, the president said, we have a red line in Syria, the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons. We didn't enforce that red line. And everyone I've talked to from the region says, you now look weak. I mean, you cannot say you have a red line and then do nothing about it. And at this point, we tried to persuade Defense Secretary Hagel has made, 17 phone calls to the Egyptian military to try to tell them, don't do this, don't do this. And they just think we will not enforce, we can't be taken, we're not taken as seriously as we should be. So in a context of U.S. withdrawal and weakness, we get a Syrian civil war with 100,000 dead. We get the Muslim Brotherhood and the military fighting in the streets of Cairo. It's not good.
And you got to remember what happens afterwards here. It's not like any other place. You've got 900, 1,000 dead in Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood pushed out of power. What happens to them afterwards and the region because of what happened there? Radicalized. And this is a generational problem. The people who were killed have children, grandchildren. This will go on for decades.
I've got to leave it right there. Thank you all very much.